So naturally, the only thing in my mind right now is Joyously. It's not that funny. And then 5 seconds later breaks.
This can't evolve. We haven't even started yet.
Yeah, we'll see how you think I can drink. We're back, bitches.
Nobody missed us.
But we are back.
Welcome to In Front of Ira.
We're Sabrina.
And Torsten.
Two historians.
And friends.
And lovers.
Of romantic comedies.
And this is the podcast in which we answer the age-old question.
Will they? Or won't they?
Is it, or isn't it, a romantic comedy?
Technically, that's two questions.
I can't do this with you right now. Joyously.
It's a bit unfortunate because we have this recording set up.
Yeah,
so.
it's... I know.
Joyously.
Anyway, we are back. This is season 3, somehow, of In Front of Ira. This is a summer season where we talk about things that we decided are summer movies, mostly because most of them are going to be very recent, which is unusual for us, but we do have some older things coming up, but we're starting very, very recent with 2024's The Idea of You.
Yeah, and why is that a summer movie, you may ask?
I don't know.
Because
it's
we
mostly
decided it is.
because Coachella is in it, which is in spring, but it looks summery. The cover of the book looks summery. There's palms on it. Anyway,
it looks California.
Exactly. It's set in LA, which automatically makes it a summer movie. Which is also why Pretty Woman is a summer movie by the same logic. Anyway,
the logic is going to carry far.
Yeah.
Okay, so we should probably talk about what this movie is, how we got this movie, and then what we think about this movie.
How we got this movie.
As we always do.
Yeah, so the movie is sort of the Notting Hill trope of normal person falls in love with famous person, in this case, the famous person is the guy. The guy is played by, and his last name is constantly pronounced differently by different people, and I couldn't find out how he actually likes his last name pronounced. So some people say Nicholas
this
Galitzine.
Makes me feel better.
Anne Hathaway I've heard say Galitzine. Then I started an interview with Seth Meyers to see how he pronounces this. He gets briefed on this, but he said Galitzine. My impulse was actually to say Galitzine because his family is Greek, but apparently his dad is actually not the Greek one. So I don't know. I guess we can just go with whatever the vibe is. It's Nick. Let's go Galitzine, I guess. Galitzine. I mean, he's British, so Galitzine feels apt. Anyway, it's Nicholas Galitzine and Anne Hathaway. And he's yeah, exactly. We're just gonna mispronounce everyone on purpose.
Like that commencement speaker in the. Did you see that? There was a video going around. They gave somebody at a commencement address everybody's name written out in the way you would pronounce them.
Yeah.
But so badly written out that they literally read every single name wrong. It was glorious.
Amazing. Friends. No. Anyway. So yeah, he's a boy band singer. He's definitely not Harry Styles. The author of this book wants us to know it is definitely not Harry Styles fanfic. It was just a loose inspiration, to which I say the filmmakers definitely didn't know it was just a loose inspiration. It's clearly some version of Harry Styles in One Direction. But anyway, I can talk about what's different from the book, but he's a boy band singer. She's the mother of a teenage daughter, and they meet at Coachella.
Yeah, the famous Coachella Music Festival.
Coachella.
I cannot. I once heard, this is from I think years ago, where Ellie Kemper on The Office says the Coachella Music Festival because she has no idea what it is, and it's stuck with me. I can never not hear that now.
Is
So now
Coachella the
everybody-
bad sequel to Cinderella?
Coachella is Ted Lasso meets Cinderella. That's your next project.
I would probably watch that anyway.
Yeah. If the shoe don't fit, never mind.
If the boot,
Yeah.
if the boot in the boot. No, anyway. So yeah, that's the premise, I guess. And they fall in love, and he's much younger than her. She's just turning 40. He's like 21 in the film. There's a bit of a difference.
No, he's 24.
Oh,
in the
he was
film.
24. Yeah, that's
he's like
the thing.
20
The book
in the
is
book, right?
yeah. So like, I think it's hard to talk about the plot without talking to the difference in the book, because I read the whole book, and and some of the choices the film makes in this regard are actually so puzzling that I do want to point them out. So they kind of softened the age difference, which I don't think makes that much difference, but it's still in that zeitgeist of like too many Gen Zers having hangouts about age gaps. I think they honestly, and then probably also just the casting, because Nicholas G. And Galitzine is 29.
The zine.
And he looks a bit younger than 29, but he doesn't look 20.
He doesn't look 20.
Yeah. And then Hathaway, Son Hathaway. But she's actually a bit older than 40. I think she's like 42, 43.
Yeah.
No? Isn't she? Or is she still? I don't want to age her. I mean, she always looks amazing.
Like 1 or 2 years older than her character, not too much though.
But like in the book, he's just 20. And I mean, that is also the point of this. But the other thing with the teenage daughter, and this is where a lot of the plot of the film doesn't make sense anymore. So the teenage daughter in the book is actually just like that age where she is still the fan of the band. She is still like 12. So she's still a tween. She's very not in the movie. In the book. Yeah. And she's very invested in the band. So it makes sense for like not just a clueless dad booking a meet and greet that the teenage daughter doesn't even want to go to anymore. She does want to go to the meet and greet, and this is where they also meet. Like, they just meet at this meet and greet. There isn't some contrived, weird, we run into each other because she doesn't know what a trailer looks like versus a VIP bathroom. And it's also not at Coachella. It is in Vegas, in, I think, one of the resorts. It's like in a hotel where they do a concert.
It's a much
and then
likelier thing.
It's a much likelier thing.
Among the unlikely things to happen.
Yeah.
I think, okay, so before we, like, figure out all the differences, I just kind of want to quickly kind of run down what actually happens. They meet in Coachella at this point because her daughter has a meet and greet that her dad, who is the divorced husband of Solène, which is Anne Hathaway's name in this, paid for, and can't come and bring the daughter there. So Solène goes very unhappily and then attends this meet and greet. Her daughter is too cool, however, by now for this meet and greet, because in this film she's 16 and she's not 12. She's not a fan of this band called August Moon, which is the kind of One Direction stand-in band there. And then Solène meets this not Harry Styles.
Not Harry Styles.
Meets not Harry Styles, played by Nicholas the Zine Galley, and they pretty quickly like have chemistry. And she is a gallery owner in LA. He finds out about that. He is a rich pop star person and clearly is into her from the very first moment, and then basically pursues her. And the rest of the movie is what happens when a much younger, much more famous pop star is into you and you're also into him, but you also have a daughter and you also have a life and you also have various other hangups and society around you telling you that this is not a good idea, essentially.
Yeah. And like celebrity culture ruining things for you, because obviously with his like fame status that is very Harry Styles like, he can't go anywhere. Throngs of teenagers will follow him everywhere. So yeah, that's that. I mean, I don't even, like, I wouldn't mind them saying, oh, we might want to not deal with child stars. I feel like that is almost the only reason why this daughter was aged, but it makes little sense.
I think
plot-wise.
I think the reason the daughter was aged is because of the ending, which is different than in the novel, right? Because they gave it a happy ending. And the happy ending is, all spoilers out here, the happy ending is basically they part ways, and they're unhappy, and that's the end of it. And that's kind of the end of the book. I didn't read the book. I just read the differences.
I'm still devastated.
And the kind of Hollywood rom-com happy ending is it has them get together 5 years later when the daughter is basically an adult out at college, like living her own life, and basically not constantly attached to her mother at the hip as you were if you're a child. So her mother can kind of like let go and let her daughter live her life and not have to protect her from the crazy fan culture.
I feel like it would have worked if she was at least 13 or 14, because, I mean, the plot of the movie also spans several months, and then if you add 5 years, she's still gonna be in college by then, especially like in the US. Yeah. At 19, she would be out of the house. So it's just the thing that doesn't work anymore. It's like, why would they then still go to this if she's not into it? I guess in that way, they can get rid of her and her friends in the beginning so that meet cute can happen without the daughter being awkwardly present. But then they also go to the meet and greet anyway. So that's still a plot point. Like, I sort of then expected the film to like do away with this meet and greet, or like just have her there and the daughter never shows up because she does not care. So I don't know why it's weird.
That's what I got from the trailers. Like, that's how it felt in the trailers, that she was at the meet and greet and the daughter was not, and it was awkward.
That would have made sense, I guess. But then the other plot point that makes zero sense is this like 16-year-old, by the way, that looks 25. She looks older than Nicholas Cage. Yes. Which also throws me off the whole film. But like, this daughter still goes through summer camp. Like,
at 16.
Summer camp is for like, 12-year-olds? Like, I know, I mean, I'm not American, but whenever I see summer camp in films, it's like tweens. It's kids or tweens. It stops at like 13, 14, I think.
I honestly don't know. I do not know the summer camp industrial complex enough, but yeah.
No, but like Parent Trap. I think of Parent Trap when they're like 11 and they get sent to summer camp. And
I bet there's summer camps where you can go up till like 18.
But especially because she looks that old, it's just such a weird thing of like, I'm gonna drop off my daughter at camp and then she's gone for 2 months. This kid is old enough to do like a work and travel. Like, I don't know. Anyway, but that kind of throws me off. Most of the other plot points remain intact. Regardless.
I think there's also one reason to age her up is to have her, because in the novel you can describe things that you need to externalize in the movie and dialogue, and you can have the daughter as more of a grown-up dialogue partner, so she can work through some of her problems with the daughter, which you can't really do with a 12-year-old.
But it also feels like because she's that much more adult, a lot of the conflict goes away almost, because yes, she suffers while she's still in school from like people being annoying about her mother being with this much younger pop star. But it's like, at that point, how much school does she have left? Like a year? Put her in a different school, the problem is solved. And in the novel, if she's 12 years old, she's a kid. And she's gonna really suffer for like 5 more years of her life. It makes complete sense to break up and say, let's postpone this. And then obviously in the book, they don't rekindle at all. They just simply break up because it is too much of a strain, which is devastating. We can talk about that again when we talk about genre. But anyway, let's talk about the meet cute of like, she's looking for the bathroom to be fair, in the VIP area, which would be kind of a trailer thing. But like, still, you can tell the difference between someone's trailer. Anyway, she does walk into his trailer, where he's actually just using his bathroom and wants to like use the bathroom. And this is how they meet, and have this like awkward moment. And
she doesn't understand that it's his bathroom and basically shoos him out. And then in the end realizes that it's his bathroom. He starts off. He is already into her at this point. This intriguingly weird woman who has walked into his trailer and wants to use the bathroom, which, to be fair, is, I think, the first time I've seen that meet cute. Like, I don't think walking into somebody's bathroom has been on the romantic comedy, like, top 10 meet cute trope lists. So
no,
good on people for being
good on them. Although I think this is a very conscious choice, thereby, in this case, the screenwriter, director, also acting choice-wise. he does the full, however, even though the roles are reversed, he's doing Hugh Grant in Notting Hill, where he's like, please stay, I have food things. And then like, it's like, I have kombucha. And if you don't know kombucha, it's kind of a salad dressing.
Yes. The best line in the movie. And like, this is, I don't want to bring in like my mild criticism already at this point, but this is incredibly funny. It's a great scene. It's well played. He really has that Hugh Grant Notting Hill energy, and that's the funniest it gets. It kind of disappears after that. It gets all heavy and he doesn't show much of that, because that energy, I get why she's into him. I get why they want to, that I understand. That's chemistry. And then everything else he kind of does after that, like showing up at her gallery and just like not paying attention to the art, and with all of his money buying all of the art so she can basically be with him and doesn't have to sell that's just kind of annoying to me. That's just kind of like a stupid
it's also different from the book in that regard. I think he either emails or texts her because she has contact details for her gallery listed, so she actually reaches out that way before showing up, which I know visually is obviously in film you always need to do something visual, but I feel like they do use the text at some point, so they could have done that, and then they meet up for lunch. And it becomes like a recurring plot point that this is just lunch, and it clearly has never been just lunch, but that's also like removed. I don't know why they wouldn't do this.
Which is something that I think would absolutely work. And it's kind of like following the When Harry Met Sally model of like kind of like slowly getting to know people over time. Again, the thing that I keep coming back with romantic comedies need time for people to become acquainted, so we buy in as viewers. It would have been nice if we'd had that, because really that scene is he's kind of annoying. He's not, like, it really put me off. Like, I was really charmed by Nicky Galitzine the third in his Hugh Grantness, and then when he comes and buys all the art in the gallery, I'm just like, that's like several red flags that I didn't even know existed.
Yeah, and I think it's just sort of clumsily trying to also combine certain things that are in the book. Like, he does buy a lot of her art. Like, obviously, his presence advances her art career, which is a logical plot point, because if people get the idea this, like, super famous guy buys art from the small gallery, but at least it is a point of tension at some point also, where she's like, I would do sort of this wanting to do it by herself, but also wanting to use the context. Like, it is a recurring plot point, and it feels like it's shoehorned into this one scene that makes him a lot more annoying than he is. And that is also a thing of, like, I think that the issue with the genre is also, like, obviously it is much more romance than is a rom-com, let's just say it right now. But the book
I'm glad we share the same opinion there. Yeah.
I mean, the book also is a full-on just romance. Like, it is always tense. There is always that sense of dread. Like, is this ever gonna work out? Because they know from the beginning the age difference, but much more the celebrity, but also the tension with that 12-year-old daughter who for the longest time doesn't even know her mother is having this affair because she's trying to keep it away from her completely, is like the constant. There's so much tension. And they're always like, whenever they go in public, at first they're still, people don't know they're together, but they're always afraid of being caught, which is sort of a bit in the book, in the film. And then later they are being found out, or they like actually go public with this. And then it gets really insane, which is also in the film. But it's like, obviously, because it's a book, it's like, it's much more stretched out. Whereas the film, this montage way too early, I think, honestly. It is that the issue with time, like yes, time has to pass, and you can sometimes like skip that in a film to like sell it to you. But I think they do this too early. You'd actually need to see them together way more, and then like montage through like in the second half of some of this.
Yeah, it felt, and I think it's almost like the movie makes a conscious choice that it wants to be much more a hot romance than a funny rom-com, and the choice is, we're not going to show the will they won't they kind of like getting together, sharing things. That whole part, we won't show much of that, and then we will show this whirlwind romance where Anne Hathaway basically in lingerie flies to New York to be seduced. Like at this point, the who is basically more into whom isn't all that clear, and I guess doesn't matter anymore because then she follows him on his tour on like his private jet, and like it's a whole giant travel montage of like for like I don't know, months, weeks, I don't actually know, like how she follows him to all these different places, and every second scene is them falling into bed again. I'm like, okay, I guess we understand, and these are attractive people, you know, doing sex type things, which I suppose works. I mean,
Yeah,
it works visually. It's just not rom-com-y, really.
Yeah, I mean, it is a romance, and I think some of the film marketing team tried to sell it as rom-com, but it never was that, and I don't think anyone who actually worked on this film thought of it as that either. It is just like sort of mislabeling.
I looked it up again on IMDb, and it just says drama, and usually if they can in any way, they will shoehorn it into, you know, romance, drama, rom-com. This just says drama.
Yeah, and I mean it is that, but even that, I think even within like this romance thing, they're making the wrong choices of where to put montage versus where to not put montage, or like where to skip time, where it's not. Because in the book, yes, they also travel around, and like the book is very. Also, my other complaint is if you are gonna focus on this, they also gloss over a lot of the sex they are actually having, and it's like if you choose for it to be romance, you could have also gone full R rating with it, like, or at least PG-17 and like go there, because the book is really, really smutty. And that's also why people read it and why people enjoy it. But people, I mean, mostly women, but like that is the genre. There is a certain genre here. And I think the film doesn't really pick, you know, it's still trying to not get the R rating. I think it's a mistake.
It's really, really walking up to that line. It's really trying. Like, I'm sure there were many discussions of like, oh, okay, how much of them can we show, and how long can we show this?
Yeah,
so
but
we can
they
still
barely
get this
show
rating.
anything.
But that's I think the way they try. They're actually. It's not. I will say that you watch it and you go like, oh, okay, this is getting heated. And my context for this, I was watching this on a train and I went like, ooh, okay, I hope nobody's like watching over my shoulder.
There's that one scene in the hotel room and then nothing else is that explicit. Nothing. And it is not even that explicit. But it's the one scene. If you read that book, there's an explicit sex scene every 20 pages. Like, that is why you're reading it.
But that is no movie gets made like that unless it's 50 Shades of Grey, which I actually don't even know how much sex they show in 50 Shades of Grey, because I wouldn't want to watch that.
It's also bullshit. But no, like if you're making a romance film that is based on the steamy affair these two people are having, you need to pick. Like you can then you just commit to it, then give us more sex. But now they're trying to do this rom-com thing, and it's still but it's not funny enough for rom-com, so it's sort of hovering between it's just melodrama. And it's like
I think what's happening is they got this sold and made on the strength of kind of the rom-com renaissance of like, oh, rom-coms are becoming a thing again. We do one with Nicholas Galitzine and Anne Hathaway. Here it is, and somebody greenlit it, and then they realized, oh yeah, you know, this should not be a rom-com. This should be a straight-on romance, like a hot, steamy romance. And there is no market for that marketing told them exists, so they couldn't do that.
And then
so Prime,
Amazon Prime was probably, or like, it is a more indie, I think, part of Amazon, but it's still Amazon, was probably like, well, we're not going to do an R-rated movie, so, you know, pick a version that isn't. So it's the usual industry bullshit, but like also because, I mean, the director and writer of the screenplay is Michael Showalter, who did The Big Sick with Kumail Nanjiani and Emily B. Gordon. And so clearly they were trying to do this. And I mean, obviously, like, Big Sick also has that element of like, he's a comedian. He's not famous at that point, but like, it is that sort of industry world romance kind of thing. And he has that comedy background, right? So it's really weird that this film that didn't turn out to be more comedic. So I don't know, like, it's just like, you could have chosen to turn this into a rom-com film versus a romance book.
Yeah.
And the fact that it has a happy ending also points to that, but then it's just not funny enough. And it's not the actor's fault, because they can clearly deliver exactly like the kombucha salad dressing dialogue. And Anne Hathaway has done. I mean, she started out with things like Princess Diaries. It's not like she can't do comedy or like rom-com type things. And the co-screenwriter, which was really interesting to me, is Jennifer Westfeldt. And Jennifer Westfeldt is an actress as well. The funny thing about the author of the book, Robin Lee, she's also an actress. Jennifer Westfeldt has been in more things than Robin Lee, but it feels like common ground of like at least people who are somehow in like an entertainment industry context. Actually,
which does make sense for that whole setup. Yeah.
What sort of bothers me with the characterization of her, but that is way stronger even in the book than the film, is that she's sort of like not like the other girl's character, because there's that scene where she goes to the meet and greet, and this other middle-aged woman who is a fan of this band is like, "Oh, are you a Mooney? Are you really like a fan of August Moon?" And she's super dismissive of that notion. And in the book, there's more of this. And that's so ironic to me because, again, girl, you wrote Harry Styles fan fiction, and please stop pretending you didn't, even if you didn't first publish it on AO3 as your Harry Styles fan fiction. It's clearly there. In her acknowledgements, she even thanks her husband, who gave her the idea when she joked to him, "I'm gonna run off with a pop star." And I'm pretty sure they were talking about Harry Styles. And it's like, and now you're like trying to backpedal that you as a middle-aged woman are a fan of this like much younger pop singer. It's like, just, go with it. It is a trope. It is a fantasy. You're currently selling this fantasy to us. But then why do you need to turn your protagonist into this aloof person who doesn't understand fandom and looks down on fandom? And that comes back it comes up in the book way more than here. But it's just weird. Like, and she goes to great lengths of like telling us how beautiful Solène is and how like cultured and like, I don't know. I mean, you can make that character, but you can do that without the dismissive element of like, and these other middle-aged women are actually fans of this boy band. I'm like, you're dating him. Like, is that so bad? Like, I mean, of course, they also talk about really obsessive fans, and it gets really like that is an important other part of fandom. But like, you don't have to.
The thing that didn't quite work for me is the fact that she's not a fan, which it would have been like, make her a fan, and like, I think part of this is like, okay, in the movie version, we want them to get together in the end. That's kind of what we're signing up for. So if we do that, then if she's a fan, like the expectation is kind of, because your dreams, you always need to see the dark side of your dreams in the movie. Yeah. That's kind of what we're doing here. If we're gonna have some drama. So if we're going to say she is a full-on fan, then it's gonna have to end badly, and then we're gonna need to find some reason for them to get back together. The issue that I really have with this movie, and for me, the chemistry works. It's not the greatest in the history of rom-coms, but I find Anne Hathaway really compelling, even though that role is a little bit odd at times. And I find Nicholas Galitzine works as this Harry Styles character. I hadn't at this point seen him in anything else, so I basically just thought that's who he was, so that's fine. The thing that really, really bugs me about this is it says drama on the tin, as I just pointed out on IMDb. There isn't a lot of really drama in this. Everything is just kind of people assuming things about other people and then making decisions that may not turn out to be the right decisions, until in the end we get this thing about when they get together and it's Anne Hathaway's daughter and she is in trouble because of all the crazy fans. And then it becomes like, this is the only real dramatic moment that we see. There's a bunch of smaller ones with the ex-husband and all of that, but those are really that is really the dramatic moment. The other dramatic moment where she just decides to leave him after the whole Europe thing is kind of just things that are in her head. That's not something that's external and that's kind of movie dramatic.
Yeah, and I mean, the thing is, you can do that because obviously a lot of in the book is her being in her head. But like, what my criticism of that is, you can externalize it. You can perfectly fine turn that into like a fight that they're also having in the book. The fight. So on the one hand, I appreciate like taking the younger character and making him the more adult one in this fight. You can do that, but it still should be an actual fight. Like, they're just not like ugly enough about it, honestly. Like, there's also undercurrents of it in the book of like, well, you know, he is a 20-year-old pop singer, so of course he's slept with other women, which shouldn't be like a jealousy thing, but of course it would come up, and then his bandmates would bring it up. There's also more drama with that asshole other band member that is sort of in that scene where they're by the pool, and he's like making comments about how, yes, he's picking up women this way, and it's sort of, that's in there. But that there's also a like subplot in the book where he also hits on her and like keeps implying that she's with the wrong band member. And that would obviously then cause friction within the band and stuff like that. And there's some other stuff of her like, well, I'm a middle-aged woman. There's these teenage girls your band members sleep with, and they're doing something wrong if they're doing that. And there's a case where one of them sleeps with a 16-year-old thinking she was 18. And that is actually a plot point because like, well, my daughter is a teenager. Like, you know, this is there's just so much more conflict as well in the book. And then again, I think the film not picking sort of the genre really well is trying to like sidestep some of this, but like you just actually need it because that is the conflict of the story. And again, aging up the daughter also removes a ton of conflict, because if your daughter is suddenly like very adult and level-headed and feminist about everything, instead of ever actually being really fucking angry at the fact that you're like sleeping with this pop star as her mother, like,
who's on a poster in her childhood bedroom, right?
Yes.
Yeah. The one scene, like all of, I find all that criticism is true, but like the movie still kind of works on its own terms through all of this. The one scene where I was really, really confused as to how old is this daughter supposed to be was that scene where they're in like this, what is it, like a portico thing after the summer camp, where she split from what is actually his name in the movie?
Hayes Campbell.
Hayes Campbell, right? Not Harry Styles. Not Harry Styles. Where she splits from him and then is incredibly distraught about it, and the daughter is very level-headed and understanding, and asks her, "Is he a feminist?" And I'm just like, "What is that? What world is that a normal conversation to have?"
To be fair, I saw a Twitter conversation about this, which, you know, isn't necessarily reflective of anything. But it was a bunch of Gen Z girls complaining about the scene, and then a millennial was like, "This is actually how a lot of you sound like." And I'm like, you're not wrong. Sorry, Gen Z listeners, we don't have anyway. You know, like, it is not wrong.
So it
most of them hopefully don't talk like this in real life, and they only talk like this on Tumblr. But then again, I'm not sure.
It felt like
it is.
But this is exactly the thing. It felt like an extremely online conversation that was dragged into the real world.
But again,
and
like,
fell completely apart.
Yeah.
It is funny. It is funny in that not meant to be funny way. And it's especially jarring because it is really the only scene in that movie where this tone is so off. It's everything else, like I said, it may work or may not work, or whatever thoughts we have about that. This is just a jarring scene that I just did not quite completely understand why it needed to be in there.
So, and again, ironically, I think the scenes that do work best are the scenes that are rom-commy in this film, which probably, again, because that's what when the director knows what they're doing, then when the actors are here for it, not that they can't also do drama. But like the hotel room, like goofy dancing Wang Chung. I'm still waiting for Wang Chung to have their like renaissance because of this film with Gen Z, like, you know, Kate Bush had because of Stranger Things. I want Wang
and
Chung
Sophie
to
Ellis
be back
Bextor because of Saltburn,
Yeah. Hasn't happened so far. I don't know why, but anyway, like that scene is just that is really good. Like, he can do goofy dancing, even though he's supposed to be a pop star, but you still buy it. Like, he can do either. And that's really charming. And then, yeah, the meet cute is charming, even though it's a weird setup, but it's like selling it through the whole kombucha thing. And then, yeah, I mean, when he's actually on ban and she's on tour with him, you can do that. Like, that's fine. They also have chemistry there. I like the way it's cut, where, you know, we have the same moment of the concert on like various nights, and he's always singing to her and that kind of thing. Also, in terms of characterization, I actually like his characterization a bit better or like his backstory better in the film than I do in the book. Because the backstory in the film is like he just auditioned because, again, it's a boy band, and this is how usually they are being put together. And he was 14 when he auditioned, and that's been his whole life. And like, he grew up with this. And I think, and he's afraid that he will never be seen as a real artist, and he will be seen as a joke. And there's this bit of like, the singer of my favorite band like invited me over, and then it turned out he just wanted to take pictures with his daughters. Like, so that is like a believable backstory, and that is like is a really good characterization for this essentially like 20-year-old kid who's probably like had to be an adult way too early as well. That kind of thing. And it works as a counterpoint to this 40-year-old woman who had a child very early. And says she sort of lost her, like there's some dialogue that suggests like she feels like she never had her 20s because she was a mom in her 20s. Her husband was then always working. She started her art gallery. Like, she sort of lost her youth, and he did too. And I think they can sort of bring that back together, and that works. Whereas in the book, he's supposed to be the person who put the band together. And I'm like, you're 20. You didn't.
Yeah. No, that does make sense. Yeah. That does make sense, because I did not, until I found one of those like lists of changes from the book to the movie, realize that was not the case in the book. And it makes perfect sense that they would bond over having kind of like lost years, like and that seems to make sense to me. Like the thing about this is the thing that leaves me kind of meh on this movie, which overall I enjoyed. Like, it is rated 6.4 on IMDb, and I think deservedly so. Not higher, not lower. It's a perfectly fine movie to watch if you want to watch a movie in which pretty people have almost no problems, and
but
then
still not enough sex. Like, this is still gonna be my gripe having read the book now.
You want the Showalter.
I want the art. I want the Showalter cut. I want the R-rated cut. Anyway,
but it's perfectly fine. It's just it doesn't quite track in that way. I think I lost kind of where I was going with this, but we're gonna pick it up.
Yeah, I think so. The other thing is that I do actually prefer the movie ending, not just because I want a happy ending, but I do think it is actually a good narrative choice to make for if the conundrum is the age gap, and if the conundrum is trying to protect her daughter, it's just wait. And the romantic notion of sort of waiting for each other, and also giving him time to like find himself more and actually like, you know, have his career of his own, because obviously he then becomes a solo artist because he's not Harry Styles. And I like that. But my gripe with it then is because it's not in the book, it's sort of tacked on, and instead of them at least doing another fucking montage, this is where the montage should have gone. You need the montage of a bit of what's happening in this gap of 5 years. I think, like you need the growth.
Hugh Grant standing around with the seasons changing around him.
Yes,
at least,
you need the Ain't No Sunshine montage at least, because otherwise it's just, well, we know what's going to happen, but we always know what's going to happen. But you need to give us a moment to like see this happening and build it up a bit, I think, is the point. And that's sort of, unfortunately, also not happening. So the ending becomes way more flat than it needs to be, and has way less impact than it needs to be, I think.
This is kind of what I was trying to say before I lost myself there, is the emotional core of this that resonated with me, that worked. Like, I believed that's real romance, that those are real people, that this could happen, obviously in that heightened way of Anne Hathaway being also kind of like the relatively well-off gallery owner. This is the other thing that, you know, the rom-com is very rarely about working class people. It's just, you know, it's not it's not like she works at McDonald's and then gets picked up into this whirlwind thing. She is, as you point out in both the book and in the movie, cultured and knows stuff, and so
wears designer clothes. And like, you know,
so even though her actual capital might not be super high. I mean, she's like left to raise her daughter from divorce from Reed Scott, who, by the way, is actually pretty good in this of Mrs. Maisel fame.
Yeah, I kept thinking where do I know him from? Where do I know him from? Had to Google it. It was obviously Mrs. Maisel,
but she fits into that world too easily. I think that's kind of the other thing. Yeah,
there's not enough.
Yeah,
jarring.
Let's talk about Reed Scott, because I think the character he played on Mrs. Maisel was very similar in the sense that he was kind of a nice guy, but
also always kind of an asshole.
Kind of like with that. There's always another shoe that's going to drop, and that's also what he plays here. So hopefully he's not going to get typecast, but he does it pretty well, because you understand where he's coming from, and then there's this wonderful scene where he left her because he had an affair with another woman, or she left him anyway. He cheated on her.
They both, like, he decided he's in love with this other woman, and then that's when they got divorced.
And there's a scene at some point where the other woman also like realizes that she's going to leave him, I think, at some point, and then wants to bond with Solène, and she's basically like, no, sorry. Like I thought was really well done, because it feels like real dynamics that humans can have, right? Like she, as the other woman, would relate to the other ex and try to kind of understand her world. And then Solène would be like, you're the reason this didn't work out. You're basically dead to me. That perfectly explainable.
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't mind a world where they actually bond over the fact that the same asshole like screwed them over, because
like
that's
a First
also
Wives Club
fun.
kind of
It's
thing.
a First Wives Club sequel that I want, but it's also like, sorry, I hate to bring especially this specific celebrity gossip in this, but it feels like it's there, and other people have pointed it out. So if he's not Harry Styles, Solène might not be Olivia Wilde, in which case Reed Scott's character would be not Jason Sudeikis. And some people have pointed this out, and I don't know how much there is to this, but also because so many people are like in the industry that have written this, it's not out of the question like that they sort of model this. I don't know.
Whatever that means
it out there.
For the actual reality of the emotional truth of those relationships, which I mean, just modeling it on something doesn't actually mean anything.
But it is definitely interesting. And I mean, it's also a tale as old as time of like, my husband left me for a younger, blonder woman, and now he has an issue with me having an affair with a younger, hotter guy. Like, you know, that has happened 50 million times. You don't need a specific example of an existing relationship.
Yeah, it's the very, very well put version of this kind of slightly under the surface, but then very quickly rising up to the surface toxic masculinity of this guy. Oh, I cheated on her because apparently she wasn't important to me, but now that I see she's doing something with another man, that can't be true because I'm still the guy in charge.
And then also the unfortunate truth that, of course, he has a point about like, please protect our daughter from this, which again has more emotional impact if she's a kid rather than like almost in college. But like in any case, the emotional truth of that is there.
Which makes him more likable than he is throughout the rest of the movie, which I also thought was a strong narrative choice, right? You could have just gone with, oh, he's bad and he's going to make bad choices. The fact that he actually points out to her, look, this is what's best for her daughter, and it ends up being the thing that's best for her daughter, makes him, at least as a dad, not as horrible as you might have thought he could be, because he gets painted as this horrible person who left her, and who apparently left her with quite a few emotional scars. That I thought was actually a pretty good choice.
And I do also like the emotional truth of this, like, oh, what's the worst that can happen if you open up to somebody? And it's like, well, exactly this. And then obviously also the rest of the plot of this movie. But I mean, that's also always at the core of this. Like, these stories are better if the people going into these relationships have some baggage. Otherwise, it doesn't make any sense, which is also why I'm less interested in teen romance usually. I mean, I was as a teenager, but like, it is way more interesting for me if people are in their 30s or 40s and like already come with the inbuilt baggage that they have to overcome, like When Harry Met Sally, where everyone is just, I mean, it starts when they're really young, but like the baggage sort of accumulates even over the course of the narrative.
You can see the baggage accumulating. That's the fun part in that.
That's the fun part. And of course, he's like in this film, 23, whatever, but like 20, this 20-year-old kid. But the fact that he was cast in a boy band at 14 obviously ages him up. So he comes with baggage and he comes with this whole life. And he also has more jarring like backstory in the book, where there was an incident with like a fan who he slept with, but like then threatening to kill herself and stuff like that. So it was more of a darker undercurrent of like what that can mean. What I thought was like what they could have even done more with, and the book obviously has, because it's hard to do this more visually. They do this with like the magazine covers, and like also my very specific gripe about the fonts for all these publications not being the fonts like my Papyrus. Oh my god, they used Papyrus. But they didn't, but they used Arial way too much for fonts of magazines. Like People magazine does not use Arial. Anyway, but like they do it through that. And I think actually one of the things also is social media, because when Notting Hill came out, there was no social media. So they obviously have the issue with the paparazzi. But now we're at the point where paparazzi is still very much a thing, but even more than the like paparazzi, you have like paparazzi basically everywhere, because everywhere you go, everyone has a smartphone, and not only can they take pictures of it with you, they can immediately put them out into the world, and then this could multiply into the millions within seconds.
So in that sense, it's actually kind of surprising how late in the game she gets found out for traveling with him.
Yeah,
because that happens relatively late.
So in the book, it is later in the narrative, I think, because of how the narrative is structured, it makes sense. But it is then sort of rectified by her saying, like, for the longest time she didn't go down the rabbit hole of Google, and then when they actually first properly found out, it turns out that all these like crazy fans who, you know, put all of this together and like trace people have long figured out that the same woman appears in the background of the same etc., etc. It just hasn't blown up quite the same way with a picture that clearly shows them kissing or something.
Yeah.
But yeah, that felt very true to sort of this world. But it feels like that is sort of like, if you do a story like this now and it's set in the present, like this social media aspect like shifts everything so drastically that you can actually create a lot more drama with it almost than the film does. And the book does create more drama because she gets hate mail, like also like creepy packages, and obviously all the social media shit, but then you can shut that down if you just erase your accounts. But like,
yeah. It's also the interesting thing about the way that social media is portrayed in that movie is it feels like this movie feels like it was made 10 years ago, in the sense that social media exists, but it's not quite as prominent as it should be in the story. That I think is kind of one of its failings. It feels like one of those movies where, you know, all the people who are making this are millennials and older who are going like, that's how the social media worked in 2012. It's probably still like that, right? And it really isn't. And that does take me out of it a little bit. On the other hand, if you're going to target an audience, which is probably going to be kind of like age-wise, either kind of between those two main characters or leaning more towards the older side, because then Anne Hathaway, with her 40 years old, is becoming the stand-in character for the viewer, then that, I guess, makes sense. Like, you wouldn't want to over-explain social media, but it's clearly not a movie that the reality of social media as it exists in 2024 is not in this movie, which was shot clearly in 2023 and is released this year.
Yeah, and again, it's a bit more prominent in the book. They do show it with those comments and the nastiness of those comments, but it is not quite as invasive as especially a fandom like One Direction is. And the fandom, they have some stuff where, like, he talks about posting on Instagram and like some of the insane comments that are also on Instagram, and they describe some of the followers when this breaks that they're actually an item. They obviously, so many people find her accounts and follow her and leave insane comments, and she has to shut all that down. So that is definitely a dimension. It's probably that struggle of like, how do we visualize that in a way that doesn't get boring? So it's sort of glossed over, but I think they should have found a way to highlight this, even if it's just including one of those scenes that is in the book where she gets that hate mail where it's like fans sending her dildos, basically go fuck yourself.
That is,
but but that's realistic. Like, this is how insane fandoms like One Direction especially is. They also talk about, again, it's totally not One Direction, Harry Styles, because they talk about like, oh, there's this like shippers of like, they ship him with one of his bandmates and they're like fully invested in this conspiracy theory that they had a relationship with each other, which is true of One Direction. And it's Harry Styles and the other guy I can't remember because I'm too old for One Direction. But it was also funny to me for the fact that it's not supposed to be One Direction, or she sort of backtracked that lately, is that like, obviously like Hayes Campbell is like a made up name and whatever, and the other band members have other names, but there's still a Liam, I think, in both. So like one of them, she didn't even bother. So like, whatever.
It's like an imperfect search and replace job, basically. It's like, oh, we forgot.
It's like, oh, but that's a common enough name. But yeah, anyway. So yeah, do we want to wrap this up?
I do want to talk
reviews?
I do want to talk about one more thing, which is something that I thought could have worked and kind of in the end didn't, which was him and leaving the sunglasses. Was that it? With her. He always ended up
the watch. I wanted to talk about the watch.
The watch.
I wanted to talk about the watch.
Why did I say sunglasses?
I don't know, because the watch actually makes sense.
Right, the watch, which he left and kind of like as a token, kind of like as an idea of I'm going to be back. But it does, when he does it for the first time, kind of come out of nowhere. I kind of wanted a lead into what that is supposed to mean so that there's more of a through line, because otherwise it does kind of fall flat, and it feels like it would have been more prominent maybe in the novel as like a recurring symbol, and it could have worked more as a recurring symbol here. As it stands, I saw him do it, I think, twice, and like kind of inferred the significance.
It's not like, so it's two things that are a bit more developed in the book, but also not fully. I think you need to like sit down and think about them more. I think it would work very more if you work through it, because clearly a watch is about time. And I mean, time is actually their issue. Time is their issue always. It's about the age. And the timing of meeting and all of this stuff. So that's actually a really nice way to kind of symbolize that if you do think about it. Like borrowing time as well, right? Being together in like these non-spaces of hotel rooms and like somewhere villa in France kind of thing. But once they leave that bubble, they're fucked. But also the other thing is that like, it's briefly really early on in the film, and when they're still in the trailer, and then his like team starts to come in and interrupts him, but it's a bit more in the book. He's already starting to set up a solo career, or like starting to think about setting up a solo career, which would mean his maturing out of the boy band. And one of the ways they're doing this is like his team obviously trying to get him other branding. And one of the ways it's doing is through Tag Heuer, like expensive Swiss watch brand Tag Heuer that usually has spokespeople who are in the 40s.
That makes sense, yeah.
Like Patrick Dempsey or whatever did Tag Heuer. And then he gets that deal, and this is how he has that watch. So that is also a symbol for that. I think it is also a bit underdeveloped in the book, but it's definitely way underdeveloped in the film. But yeah.
Okay, yeah. So the symbolism could be better. The time symbolism I get, again, I'm not usually somebody who is dumb about missing symbolism,
no, but it's not
really very obvious. Yeah.
Prominent enough.
There's one more thing that we need to address, and that is the presence of Graham Norton at various points in this movie.
Yes, because like the most unrealistic thing of this movie, believe it or not, is that only one person is the guest on Graham Norton. Only one person? This is where I draw the line. The whole point of the Graham Norton show is that there's like 4 absolutely weirdly matched celebrities stuck on a couch together, and then someone British would say something completely outrageous, and one American will be like, how the fuck are you able to talk about this on TV? And it will be funny. And it
that
will
would
be
have been
things
so great
like,
for cameos.
Yes. And I mean, the weird thing is they have a Adele cameo. Like Adele is on Graham Norton, but also by herself, and she would have been hilarious with like. But they probably couldn't make the schedule work. But stick someone in there. I mean, like all of these people must have famous friends, like Michael Showalter. Like I don't know, call someone.
I think Anne Hathaway has some famous friends. Just gonna put that out there.
Even like just call someone.
The other thing is it's only Graham Norton. They clearly only could get Graham Norton, which is like fine. Like you can watch Graham Norton in the States, definitely via BBC America.
I guess, but who's watching that?
That's the thing. Like if I watch it, it would be on like clips on the internet that
not on her TV.
But like on a TV in the bedroom, that's like 1990s Jay Leno style. That's not
Jay
how
Leno. This is where in the 90s Jay Leno would have been there, because Jay Leno was a cameo whore. Jay Leno was in every film that was made between 1992 and 1996. Like he was just there.
Somebody should
make a film without Jay Leno.
Somebody should write a filmic biography of Jay Leno cameos, just because like what is going on. But yeah, that is, I think, what they were going for. But it feels weird because not that many people, I think, watch late night in that way anymore. Although, I mean, enough late night shows exist, and not everybody time shifts.
You know who they were supposed to call, because he would have probably done it, especially in the comedy context that Michael Showalter existed. Seth Meyers. Just call Seth Meyers.
Maybe that was a scheduling thing. I don't know. It's weird.
I mean, Graham Norton is also fine for the British aspect of it, and I love Graham Norton. But then, like, sit more people on his couch, or and also bring in Seth Meyers.
Was the original, was the novel more British-ish than the movie? Because in the novel she's like French or something. Like, was it more European? Is that kind of like the
she's
excuse?
Definitely like American, but she has French parents, and that is also a point of tension. That is like a small thing, but it's like. That is an applied background, and she does speak French again, like with the culture thing, but then also sort of the high class versus like
because she just has the name.
So it is clear her parents are French, and they're complaining about her being too American because she grew up in the US. So what did you expect? You have an American child, but anyway. That is in there, but it's not more British. Like, actually, there's, oh my god, yes, while we're at it, with Rans. But there's a scene in the book where it was clearly like an American woman going, okay, what do British men do? And it's like, oh, they watch football. And then it is set during, I think it is also the Euros, not the World Cup, because of the year it is set in. And but clearly, she like Googled specific matches that were on during the Euros, which is easy enough, and like tried to be realistic about which of the matches they were gonna watch. But it's like it just felt such a this is a thing they would have done in the summer of because they're British and they're really invested. And I'm sure that is true because also the weird, I think, implication of the film is that the band is multinational. In the book, they're very clearly all Brits. Again, One Direction. But yeah, anyway, it felt like such a weird thing of like, I guess they watched the football to shoehorn that in. And especially because like... He wouldn't be invested in the Netherlands. What was it? Against something or other match. enough to like forego sleeping with her. I'm just putting it out there. If it was England, yes, but not if the Netherlands are playing whomever in like the prelims for the Euros 2020, whatever. So, but yeah.
Okay, while we're complaining, there's one thing. There's one thing that also bugged me, which was kind of like the best friend character, who was made up to be kind of early on more like a person that she relates to, also gets the great line, which helps us bridge the whole like age gap thing, where Solane says, so when my ex-husband does it with a younger woman, it's icky, but when I do it with a younger man, it's fine. And then her friend says, yes, because I hate him and I love you. And I'm just like, that is actually kind of a good explanation. That is actually fine. She doesn't have much to do, though. I found that a little bit, because I wanted to see more of her.
The book is a bit better about like she established this gallery with this other woman, and they're actually like showcasing like diverse artists, yada yada yada. But yeah, it's like there's no best friend characters in this, which is annoying because that's usually where a lot of the good lines do come from.
Yeah,
but anyway,
so again, not a romantic comedy, lack of best friends. So we will talk about what people thought about this movie, since now you've heard almost an hour of us talking about how we thought about this movie. Let's go.
Interestingly enough for me is that the critics' reception of this was really, really, really positive. When it first came out, they had screenings of it, because obviously it's on streaming, so it didn't have a theatrical release, but they had like press, and I think they might have put it at one festival to sort of show it to the press, I forgot. But it has, like, it's still on Rotten Tomatoes, it's an 82, which is very high, I think, for critics especially, who usually are the ones that hate rom-coms way more than the audience. And in the first reviews were like glowing. And then the audience rating is 67%, which I think is way more in line with also what we're saying. But I thought that was an interesting, like an unexpected difference in criticism, like critic reviews. But
yeah, and as I said, the IMDb is 6.4, which is kind of like right around where you expect like rom-coms to land. Again, this is not really a rom-com, but it kind of has at least vestiges of that, and people are watching it because of it. I mean, I wouldn't have put this on a long train ride trying to relax after work if I hadn't thought it was a rom-com. If I thought, oh, this is going to be an emotional drama, I would have been out. So,
I'm just Googling if there's a tagline, because I forgot, but probably not, because they don't do taglines anymore. I think.
Right, I'm trying to figure out, there's one really good piece of writing on this that I learned about and that I saved in my bookmark somewhere. Hope I'm not going to open up something that's then going to start auto-playing. Just a sec.
I think one of the reviews I caught on Rotten Tomatoes has the line that I immediately thought as well, it doesn't have, what is it? Basically, it is not Notting Hill. It doesn't have the charm of Notting Hill, but what is, basically, was the review. And I'm like, yeah, this is the current problem with movies. Because it's like, what is? Like, you know, even Richard Curtis cannot reproduce Notting Hill in 4 Weddings. Like, we're just lost at this point. And I don't think it's because there aren't any writers anymore. It's just because the writers that can do this don't get greenlit, or then the studio starts coming in. I think Michael Showalter could have, developed this into this kind of thing more. But then again, it's probably like conflicting things. But I don't know, conflicting ideas of what this is supposed to be.
Of what it's supposed to be. Yeah, that's the thing. Yeah. Okay, so the thing that I found, which I was watching a bunch of like reviews and things, and that just kind of came up, is Katie Waldman's "The Idea of You and the Notion of the Hot Mom," which is kind of a slightly misleading title for that piece, which really says that the movie is much more about what it means to be a fan, even though it isn't really like it punts because it doesn't make her one. But in the end, that's kind of what it was about. And I thought that was a really useful way of thinking about it. And some of the things that we pointed out that don't quite seem to make sense about it in the movie version, actually through that lens do make sense. The movie still doesn't actually completely go there, but it is much more legible that way. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think, I'm surprised I haven't seen like the outrage from the age gap crowd, probably because they soften it, but it's yeah.
I mean, it is at this point, at the point where they actually get together, right? Where it's not just kind of like, this is a fling, this is an affair, this is a bad idea. At the point where they actually get together 5 years later, she's going to be 44 or 45, and he's going to be 29. And all of a sudden, that age gap is very different than 20 versus 20 to 40 as originally in the novel, right? It's a completely different story.
Yeah, it's the thing. I mean, I'm 34. If I would date a 20-year-old, people would still roll their eyes. I would please tell me. If I would ever date a 20-year-old, someone stop me, because no. But like, if I date again, if in 5 years I date a 29-year-old, it doesn't matter. If a 39, like, it's just like,
I was wondering because this is such a prominent thing, especially with Gen Z, which is, I think, indicative not just of what is the age gap and the kind of like inherent ick with that, but also in terms of different power, right? Because if you feel like you have no power, then that makes a lot of a difference. So I think the fact that he is basically the largest star in the world, and at the point where they're 15 years apart-ish, but both are clearly mature adults, is a very different story, right? It's like if you hear about like 100-year-old marrying an 85-year-old, you're going to be like, yeah, you're both like you're both
old,
like,
you're both about to die, like,
and
whatever.
I've wondered what the age is at which kind of society seems to stop really caring about that so much. And I think it's right around
both of them past 30.
Yeah, that's probably it. Like I'm in like late 20s, 30s.
Yeah,
30 is definitely.
I think given the fact that he had to age early, for him it would already be like mid to late 20s. But like for the average person, it is also just having passed that threshold. There is a marked difference in how you see yourself and where you are in your life, in the world. And
it's being a person who is a full person, who's not.
Yeah, and who has had relationships before, and who's had jobs, and may have a career trajectory that may have not changed, may have not changed. Like you've gone through all of that. So, but yeah.
You've done like one round around the block of human life.
Yeah, you have accumulated all that baggage.
Somebody might have like done a couple of extra rounds, but
yeah, you've been traumatized enough. You're like an
congratulations.
Anyway, so there are no taglines because we don't do these anymore, which is sad. But like, what is your tagline? Your fake tagline for this movie?
My fake tagline is salad dressing makes for good romance.
Well, that is a Nora Ephron thing. It actually was lining up with the celebrity backstory to this that may or may not be true, because the salad dressing in Nora Ephron's Heartburn plays a prominent role in Olivia Wilde and Jason Sudeikis' breakup. But anyway, we do not do this here.
I just to point out, I have thought about Nora Ephron's Heartburn a lot, not because I'm having troubles with the heart, but because I had actual heartburn. I went to the doctor because I had like eaten too many various things when I was visiting my parents, and for some reason, like my mind immediately
can just get
went
meds
to
at the pharmacy. But yeah,
I did in the end get meds, but there was it was a whole thing. And my mind went to, Nora Ephron wrote about this, but she didn't, but she did. So
no, I don't
know what that says about me.
I think that is also an interesting age line, because at what age do things like heartburn start to actually trouble you, because you're old now, and it's probably around 30. But anyway, my fake tagline is a film that is
okay. Just no. We need to tell this. So the point at which the age gap starts becoming less of an issue is the moment that you get heartburn, which is around in your 30s. So Nora Ephron again has it all figured out,
exactly,
metaphorically and everything.
My fake tagline is a film that is not about Harry Styles. Anyway.
Okay.
And my rating for this film is 3 out of 5 kombuchas.
I will join you with 3 out of 5 bottles of salad dressing.